Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. From the outside, we look solid. Madison and I had what people called a steady marriage. The kind neighbors envied and friends joked about at dinner parties. We owned a neat blue-gray house at the end of Maple Drive, shared a golden retriever named Daisy, and took turns burning pancakes every Sunday. But what no one saw was how silent breakfast had become. She used to hum while making coffee, hair tangled from sleep, one bare foot tapping against the tile. I love that sound. Lately, there was nothing, just a faint click of her phone screen lighting up before dawn. At first, I told myself she was just busy. She worked in marketing, deadlines came fast, clients called at odd hours. But something about her tone changed. There was a new laugh, short, quiet, almost guilty. I'd walk in, and she'd lock her phone like a teenager hiding secrets. I was 36, running my own small construction firm, exhausted most nights, yet still making time to cook her favorite meals. Madison was 34, ambitious, sharp, the kind of woman who could win an argument in 3 words. We'd build our world together brick by brick, but lately, I could feel one of us chipping at the foundation. One Thursday evening, as I scrubbed grease from my hands after work, she came down the stairs in a fitted black dress I hadn't seen since our honeymoon phase. Her hair fell perfectly down her shoulders, perfume wrapping around her like smoke. "Big meeting?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated before answering, tucking her phone into her purse. "Dinner. With a friend from college." Her tone was too light, the kind people use when they're testing how much you'll question them. "Friend," I echoed, meeting her eyes. "Which one?" She rolled hers, a sharp sigh escaping. "Ryan, you're being ridiculous. You're always so controlling. It's just dinner with my ex, for God's sake. We're adults." That single sentence hit harder than any argument ever could. Not because she admitted it was her ex, but because she didn't see the problem. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just stared for a moment, forcing a faint smile. "All right, have fun." Her lips parted, confused. Maybe she expected me to forbid it or throw a fit, but I didn't. I'd learned that quiet reveals more than confrontation. When she left, Daisy curled up beside me on the couch. The house felt bigger, emptier, like it already knew something I didn't. I glanced at our wedding photo above the fireplace. Madison laughing, wind in her hair, eyes full of promise. I hadn't realized until that night how long it had been since she'd looked at me that way. Hours passed. 10 o'clock. 11. I scrolled through my phone, pretending to watch a game while my mind raced. Was it really just dinner? Or was it the kind of reunion people justify only after they've already decided to cross a line? When the clock hit midnight, I heard her car pull into the driveway. She walked in smelling of wine and expensive cologne that wasn't mine. I asked nothing, but inside, something cold settled in. That was the night I stopped being a husband in love and started becoming a man with a plan. The morning after her dinner, Madison acted like nothing had happened. She hummed softly while making coffee, scrolling through her phone, smiling at something I wasn't supposed to notice. Her lipstick from the night before still faintly marked the edge of her mug. "Sleep well?" I asked, voice calm, steady. She nodded, not looking up. "Yeah, you." Like a baby, I lied. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't hit all at once. It seeps in quietly, like a draft through a cracked window. You start second-guessing every glance, every late text, every "forgot my charger at work." But deep down, you already know. By noon, while she was at work, I decided to stop wondering. I wasn't going to beg for honesty anymore. I was going to find it myself. I wasn't the kind of man who snooped. I believed in privacy, in trust. But when trust becomes a one-way street, you learn to read the signs the hard way. Her laptop was open on the counter when I came home from the site early that day. I didn't even have to guess her password. It was our wedding date. The irony stung. At first, everything seemed normal. Emails, meetings, project files. But then there it was. A folder named Old Memories. Inside were messages, screenshots of conversations with someone named Derek. I didn't have to wonder who he was. Her college friend. The messages started innocent enough. Jokes about the past, old photos, a line about how things were simpler back then. But soon, the tone changed. late-night messages, compliments that didn't belong to an old friend, and one line that shattered every remaining doubt I had. Last night felt right. It reminded me of us before everything got complicated. I closed the laptop slowly. The air felt heavier, almost suffocating. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. But instead of confronting her that night, I played along. I hugged her when she walked in, asked how work was, even offered to make dinner. She didn't suspect a thing. Maybe she thought I'd never notice, or maybe she didn't care if I did. Over the next few days, I studied her patterns. She became careless. Longer showers, constant smiling at her phone, business dinners that always ended near midnight. I started to think maybe she wanted me to find out, so she'd have an excuse to leave without being the bad guy. That was her mistake. Because I wasn't going to give her the dramatic confrontation she probably rehearsed in her head. I was going to give her something she never expected. Peaceful, quiet consequences. First, I called our accountant. We had joint investments, a shared house, and a savings account that had taken me 10 years to build. By the end of the week, everything tied to my name was secure, unreachable to her. Next, I visited my attorney friend, Tom. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "You sure you want to do this, man?" I nodded. She made her choice. I'm just finishing the paperwork. Madison had always seen me as predictable, a steady, simple guy. The one who never raised his voice, who fixed the faucet and took out the trash, who'd always be there waiting no matter what. She was about to find out that even quiet men have limits. That weekend, she told me she was going out again. "Another dinner," she said lightly, slipping on her heels. I smiled faintly. "Same restaurant." She blinked, startled. "What?" "Nothing. You look nice." That small crack in her composure was all I needed to confirm what I already knew. After she left, I packed her things, every piece of clothing, every trinket she'd bought since the day she met me. I placed them neatly by the door, labeled each box by room, folded her dresses carefully like I was doing her one last kindness. Then I sat down at the dining table, poured myself a glass of bourbon, and waited. At midnight, the door opened. Madison froze when she saw the boxes lined up. Her voice trembled. What's all this?" I leaned back in my chair, calm, collected. "Just making space," I said quietly. "For honesty." She stammered, eyes darting between me and the boxes. "Ryan, I don't." I cut her off gently. "Madison, you don't have to explain. I already know. I saw the messages. I know about Derek." Her face went pale. "You went through my laptop?" "Yeah," I said, sipping the drink. Turns out, it's not that hard to find what someone hides when they stop pretending to care. Silence filled the room. Daisy whined softly from her corner, sensing the tension. Madison's shoulders sagged. "Ryan, please, it was a mistake. It didn't mean—" "Save it," I said quietly. "You call me controlling for asking questions, remember?" So I stopped asking. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move. I wasn't going to comfort her this time. She whispered, "So that's it? You're just done?" I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it wide. "No, Madison, you were done first. I'm just catching up." She didn't say another word, just stared at the life she'd thrown away, one quiet betrayal at a time. As she stepped outside, dragging her suitcase behind her, I said the only words left that made sense, calm, steady, final. "Good night, Madison." And for the first time in a long time, the silence felt like freedom. For 2 weeks after she left, the house was quiet, eerily peaceful, the kind of silence that doesn't hurt anymore. The coffee maker hissed in the morning. The clock ticked through empty evenings, and Daisy lay at my feet as if she, too, sensed that something heavy had finally lifted. People think heartbreak comes with crying or yelling, but mine didn't. It came with relief. Relief that the guessing was over. Relief that I could finally breathe without waiting for lies to drop like crumbs. I went back to work like nothing happened. My crew didn't notice much, though my friend Tom kept checking in, asking, "You holding up?" "I'm fine," I'd reply, and I meant it. Every day, I focused on rebuilding, not just my house, but myself. I started running again before sunrise, blasting music through my earbuds while the streets were still empty. I finally fixed that old Ford truck I'd been putting off for years. Every small task felt like reclaiming a piece of myself Madison had worn down over time. But peace never lasts long when guilt starts eating someone alive. It was a rainy Thursday when she showed up again. I came home to find her standing on the porch, Makeup smudged, eyes red. Her hair was a mess, her clothes wrinkled. She didn't look like the woman who left me for a harmless dinner. She looked like someone who'd lost a war she started. "Ryan," she whispered as I opened the door, "can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. "Talk here," I said, leaning on the doorframe. She hesitated. I made a mistake. Derek wasn't what I thought he was. He's married now. It's over. I just want to come home." I almost laughed, not out of cruelty, but disbelief. Home? The place she burned down herself? "Funny," I said quietly. "You didn't call home when you walked out." Her lips trembled. "Please. I miss you. I miss us." I was stupid, I thought. I interrupted her gently. "You thought the grass was greener. Turns out it was just painted." She blinked fast, her voice breaking. "You're not even angry." I said truthfully, until I realized anger keeps you tied to someone who doesn't deserve you. For a moment, she just stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. Maybe that was the real revenge, seeing me calm, grounded, untouchable by her chaos. But I had something else planned, something that would make her understand what she'd really lost. I stepped aside finally. "Come in," I said. She looked relieved, stepping through the doorway like she was walking into forgiveness. But the second she entered, her face fell. The walls that once held our wedding photos were bare. The living room was spotless, cold, unfamiliar. The house no longer carried her scent, her touch, or any trace of her presence. "Where's all our stuff?" she asked quietly. I smiled faintly. "You mean your stuff?" "I donated what was left. The rest? Sold." It was time to make room for better things. She swallowed hard. "Better things? Ryan, what does that even mean?" I took out an envelope from the table and handed it to her. "That's what it means." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a finalized divorce decree, signed, stamped, processed. "This can't be real," she said, voice shaking. "It's very real," I said. "You walked out that night thinking you had time to come back when it suited you. But I decided I was done waiting. So while you were chasing memories, I was rebuilding a future." She stared down at the papers like they were foreign objects. "You already filed?" I nodded. "The day after you left." I didn't see the point in delaying the inevitable. Her tears fell freely now, running down her face in silence. "So that's it. You're just over it." "Madison," I said softly, "you killed something you thought you could resurrect. But love doesn't work that way. You can't bury trust and expect it to breathe again." For the first time in years, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't pride. It was regret. Genuine, hollow regret. "I don't even know who you are anymore," she whispered. "That's the point," I replied. "You never really tried to." There was a long pause before she said, almost in a whisper, "He never loved me, you know. Derek, he just wanted to see if he still could." I nodded slowly. "And now you know how it feels." Madison tried to speak again, but no words came out. She looked around the house one last time, realizing she no longer belonged here. Everything, the furniture, the air, even Daisy, had moved on. As she turned toward the door, I added quietly, "I wish you the best, Madison. I really do. But whatever you're searching for, it's not here anymore." She hesitated, tears glistening in her eyes. "You really won't ever forgive me, will you?" I met her gaze steadily. "Forgiveness isn't the problem," I said. "It's trust, and that's something you can't fix once you've shattered it." Then I opened the door. She walked out slowly, her heels clicking against the wet pavement, until she disappeared down the street. When the door finally closed, I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the quiet. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. The morning after she left for good, sunlight poured through the windows for the first time in what felt like months. It didn't feel heavy anymore. No tension, no pretending, no walking on eggshells around someone who'd already mentally checked out long before she packed her bags. I stood by the kitchen counter, brewing coffee like I had 1,000 times before, but this time I didn't glance at the empty chair across from me with bitterness. It wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. People always talk about revenge, like it's about getting even, about watching the person who hurt you suffer. But that morning, I realized it was never about that. Real revenge, the kind that actually gives peace, is walking away stronger while they keep looking for closure you already found. Over the following weeks, life started taking shape again. I got up earlier, ran longer miles, started eating real meals instead of microwave leftovers. I'd forgotten what it felt like to look forward to the day instead of counting down until bedtime. Work got busier too. My construction business, which I'd started from scratch years ago, began to thrive again. It's funny, when you cut out the poison, everything starts to heal naturally. And then one afternoon, I got an email that changed everything. It was from an old client, a woman named Claire Reynolds, who was opening a new community center downtown. She'd been one of my first clients years ago, back when I was still learning how to bid for projects. She wrote, "Ryan, I remember how dedicated you were when we first met. I'd love for your company to handle this new project. You deserve it." The budget she mentioned was big, bigger than anything I'd ever taken on. That night, I sat on the porch with Daisy by my feet, looking out at the sunset, and thought about how strange life is. Sometimes, when someone walks out, it isn't a loss. It's the start of everything finally falling into place. A few days later, I ran into Madison again. It wasn't planned. I was grabbing a sandwich at a cafe near the new job site when I heard a familiar voice at the counter. I turned, and there she was, same woman, different light. She looked smaller somehow, worn out, like life had taken the shine she once wore so proudly. When she noticed me, her face froze. She hesitated, then smiled nervously. "Ryan, hey, you look good." I nodded politely. "Thanks." She tucked her hair behind her ear, eyes searching mine for some sign of softness. "I heard about your company. You're really doing well." "Try my best," I said, sipping my coffee. There was an awkward silence before she spoke again. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed to say it." I studied her for a moment. There was no anger left in me, just distance. "You don't need to say it," I said quietly. "It's done." She nodded slowly, like she knew that was the real end. "You really moved on, didn't you?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah, I had to." She looked down, fidgeting with her ring finger, bare now. "You deserve to be happy, Ryan. I hope you are." "I am," I said honestly. When she walked out of that cafe, I didn't feel the old ache anymore. Just gratitude. Gratitude that life had forced me to grow in ways I never would have if she'd stayed. That night, I called Claire back to confirm the project. We ended up talking longer than expected, about work, travel, life, and the weird ways people find each other after losing themselves. There was something refreshing about it. No pretenses, no games. Just real conversation. Weeks passed, and she'd often stop by the site with coffee for everyone. She wasn't like Madison. She didn't need attention to feel alive. She listened. She cared. And without even trying, she reminded me that love isn't supposed to feel like anxiety. It's supposed to feel like peace. One evening, as we were locking up, Claire smiled and said, "You seem lighter these days." I chuckled. I guess I finally dropped some dead weight. She laughed softly, the kind that feels like warmth after a long winter. "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working." I looked at her then, not the way you look at someone you're trying to impress, but the way you look at someone who makes the world quiet again. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt ready. And as the months went on, I realized that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes, it's about redemption. It's about rising so high that the people who doubted you have to look up to see where you've gone. Madison had her choices, and I had mine. She chased temporary excitement and ended up alone. I chose peace and found more than I'd ever lost. One night, while closing up the site, I looked at the nearly finished community center, glass windows gleaming under the streetlights, clean, strong, steady. It felt symbolic, like a reflection of everything I'd rebuilt inside myself. I stood there for a while, hands in my pockets, wind brushing against my jacket. Then I whispered to myself, "You did it. You really did." Daisy barked from the truck, tail wagging, impatient to go home. Home. The word didn't sting anymore, because now it meant something different. It meant peace. It meant self-respect. It meant freedom from someone who never deserved the kind of love I gave her. And as I drove off into the quiet night, with the city lights fading in the mirror, I finally smiled. Not the polite kind, but the real kind.